In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how you can create these simple iconic depictions using nothing but strokes in Inkscape. Before we get started, be sure to check out my mailing list and subscribe if you'd like to receive over 200 free design templates. That includes logos, avatars, icons, textures, and so much more. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to receive the free templates that I send out each month. And with that out of the way, let's get started. So we're going to start with the simplest depiction here, which is the hot dog icon, and then we'll work in order after that. So let me move this out of the way, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm going to click and drag to draw an elongated rectangle like that. And I'm going to take this handle over here in the top right corner and just round that so that these ends are completely rounded. And then I'll grab my select tool. I want to come up here to the tool settings menu, and where it says when scaling rectangles, scale the radii of rounded corners, we're going to leave that unchecked. And then this icon right here where it says when scaling objects, scale the stroke width by the same proportion. I'm going to turn that off. So we want these two icons disabled for this tutorial. And now I'm going to apply an outline to this object known as a stroke. So to do that, let me first click the red X to get rid of the fill, and then I'll hold the Shift key and click on the black swatch to add a stroke to the object. And now I want to change the size of that stroke. I want to make it a little larger. So I'm going to double click this stroke, this stripe down here, and it's going to open the fill and stroke menu. And I will click on the stroke style tab, and I'm going to increase the size of this to something like 10. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I will convert that to a path. So we'll go to path, object to path. And now I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and create a larger rectangle going over it like this. I'll make it about that big. And let me reset the corners to be sharp again, and then I'll manually round them a little more like that. And once I'm happy with that, I'll take both of those objects. I'm going to click and drag over both of them to select them. And I'm going to open up the alignment menu by going to Object and selecting Align and Distribute. I'll make sure I have last selected chosen from this dropdown, and I want to center it vertically and horizontally. And then I want to take just this rectangle right here. I'm going to right click it, go to Duplicate, hold Shift, click on the larger rectangle, and go to Path and select Cut Path. And now we can click off of it to deselect everything. And now we can just take these objects in here and click on them. Click on them to select them and press the Delete key to get rid of them. Now I'm going to grab my pen tool. I'm going to choose the B-spline option in the tool settings up here. And I'm just going to click to add points and draw a curved line going through this object. Now as I draw it, you can see the curve is being automatically bent. So I'm just going to click to add the points. And once I'm finished, I'm going to press the Enter key. And now I can make this the same size as the other strokes, which is 10. So I'll change that to 10. And I can go to the Nodes tool and adjust this to make this look nicer if it needs to be cleaned up a bit. So I'm going to adjust these nodes a little bit. And I'd say that looks pretty good. Let's convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. And I want the caps of the stroke to be rounded. So I'm going to click on the rounded cap option. And then I'm going to select all of this and go to Path and select Combine. Now I will go to the Path Effects menu by going to Path and selecting Path Effect. And I'm going to apply the Bend Path Effect. So I'm going to click this drop down and I'm looking for Bend, which is right here. If you're having trouble finding it, you could just type in Bend into the search box and it'll show up there. Now I'll click this icon right here so that we get this path that we can bend. I'm going to move this out a little bit. And I'm going to take this green path and bend that down. And then I'll take these handles and adjust them as needed. I'll even hold Control to lock it onto a 15-degree angle like that. I'll do the same thing over here so that it looks consistent on each side. And you could take this handle right here and make the object wider if you'd like. And once you're happy with how it looks, you can go to Path, Object to Path, and then grab the Select tool. And I'm going to hold Control and just scale this down. There we go. And as I scale it down, the lines are becoming thicker. Well, it's not that the lines are becoming thicker. It's just that they appear thicker because the object is a smaller size. And then I'll click on it again to get the rotation handles, and I'll rotate this around like that. And now we have our hot dog icon. So let's move on to the next one, which would be the ice cream cone. I'm going to grab the Stars and Polygons tool, and I'm going to choose regular polygon. I want 3 corners, and make sure you have rounded set to 0. And then I'll just click and drag until I have a triangle where the point is on the bottom. And then I'll convert that to a path. And I'll take this node and just bring this down. I'm going to hold Control and click and drag this node and bring it down about that much. And I'm going to click this button up here that says Add Corners LPE. And once I do that, I'll click on just this corner node down here and then take this handle and make this corner a little rounded. Not too much, just a slight amount. And that looks pretty good. Now I can convert that to a path by clicking on this button, Object to Path. And now I'm going to draw some lines going through it. So I'm going to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to use, this time I'm going to use the regular straight lines option. And I want to turn on snapping so that I can snap to these lines. I'm going to come up here to the magnet icon and click on that. And then I'm going to snap to this line right here. And I'm going to hold Control and move this line up and to the right about that far. And click again to add another point. And then press Enter to close the path. And then I'll do the same thing up here. Click to add a point. Hold Control, move this at the same angle until it snaps to the other side of the path. Click again. And then press Enter to close the path. And now I can take both of those lines and go to the Stroke Style tab and make them 10 pixels in size. And there we go, we have the cone part. So let's draw the top part now. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, click and drag to draw a rectangle going over it like that. Let me move this over. I'm going to hold Control and scale this down a bit so it's not quite as big. And let me go back to the rectangle tool and click on this setting to make the corners sharp again, because we're going to round them manually. I just want to make sure I get the size of the rectangle right first. Let me snap this in place. In fact, I'm going to hold Shift and click on the cone so I have them both selected, and go back to the alignment menu and make sure I have it centered like that. And now I could take this rectangle, let's go back to the rectangle tool, and I'll round this all the way like that. Now I'm going to make this a little wider. You notice here, it's not quite wide enough because you can see the corner sticking out. So to do that, I'm going to hold the Shift key and take one of these side arrows and scale it out like that. There we go. And now I will make another one. So let me right click this, go to duplicate, and I'll just snap this right in place on top of it. And I'll make this one a little less wide. So I'll hold Shift, click and drag to bring that in. There we go. And then finally the top one. So let me duplicate that again. Right click, duplicate, bring this up here. And I'll hold Shift and scale that in a little more. And now I'm going to convert this to a path. So we'll go to Path, Object to Path. And then I'll grab the Nodes tool. And I want to click and drag over these 2 nodes right here. And then click the button up here that says Break Path at Selected Nodes. And then I'll go to Path and select Break Apart. So now let's click off of it to deselect everything. I'm going to take this path and hold Control and scale this down. And I will even move this over a bit. And then I'm going to select this path. I'm going to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to start by clicking on this node, and then I'm going to snap to this end of the path, and then click and press Enter. And now I can grab the Nodes tool, and I'm just going to curve this line in like that. In fact, I'll click on this node till we get these handles, and I'll hold Control and make sure that this handle is going horizontal, and that'll ensure a nice smooth transition from the straight line to the curve. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll take this one, hold Control, bring that handle straight down, and there we go. In fact, what I will do is, let me select this part, select those nodes, and I'm going to hold Control and bring them in like that. And that looks a lot better. So let me take both of those objects now and bring them back towards the center like that. And now I'm going to take all of these top rectangles right here, and I'm going to go to Path, Object to Path, and I'm going to click on them again until I get the rotation handles. And I want to use this arrow on the side over here, which is the shearing handle, and shear this up a little bit. Or you know what, we have to turn off snapping because that will get in the way. And then we can shear this up to give this a slight angle. And once that's applied, I'm going to hold Control and bring this down until it's overlapping over the cone. And then deselect everything. Then I'll take just this object, right-click, duplicate, hold Shift, click on this triangle, and go to Path and select Cut Path. And now we could take this object and get rid of it. And do the same thing with this line right here. I'm going to take this object, duplicate it again, hold Shift and select this line and go to Path, Cut Path. And now we can get rid of this line. And there we go. Now what we can do is select all of this and go to Path and select Combine. And now it's one object. And if you hold Control and scale it down, you could have the same effect of making the lines a little larger. Okay, so now that design is finished. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next one would be the hamburger icon. So let's get started on that. I'm going to grab the circle tool, hold Control and click and drag to draw a rounded circle like that. And then I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and I'm going to draw a rectangle going through about a third of that. And I want to make the corner sharp, and let's align both of these on the horizontal and vertical axis. And in fact, I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm going to hold the Shift key and scale that down a little bit, maybe about that much. And then I'll right click that and go to duplicate. And then I'll hold Shift and click on the circle and go to Path and select Difference. And actually we can get rid of that. We didn't need to duplicate that. Okay, let's break this apart now. Let's go to Path and Break Apart. Get rid of the bottom one. And I'm going to select this object and I'm going to copy it. So right click, go to Copy, and then draw a rectangle down here that's roughly the same width. But we're going to ensure that it's the same width by going to Edit, Paste, and choose Paste Width. And that'll make it the same width. And now we can center align that. So let's select both of those and center them. And I'm going to hold Control and move this down. Let's convert this to a path. We'll go to Path, Object to Path. And I'll grab the Nodes tool. And I'm going to apply the corners LPE to this one as well. So I'll take these two nodes down here and I'll round these about that much. And then I'll take these two nodes right here and I'll round them slightly. Not as much as the bottom nodes, a little less. And then I'll do the same thing to this object. We will go to the corners LPE, select both of those nodes, and then apply the roundedness like that. Okay, so now I'm going to make this a little larger. I'm going to hold Control and click and drag up like that. There we go. Okay, so let's grab the rectangle tool. Let's turn snapping back on. And I'm going to snap to this corner right here and click and drag. Snap to that corner down there. And let's make sure we have all of this centered. There we go. And I'm going to grab the pen tool again. Snap to this edge. Hold Control, bring the line straight across. Snap to that edge. Press Enter. Let's make that line the same size, 12 pixels. And now I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, hold Control, click and drag, and let's rotate this around. I'm going to hold Control while I click and drag to rotate it around like that. And I'm going to place this right about here. Let's turn off snapping again. I'll place this right about here. And I'm going to take this line and, well, you know what? Let's select all of this and bring the opacity down for now. We're going to need to be able to see what we're doing through these objects. So I'm going to take this line and I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'll hold Shift and select the square that we just drew and go to Path and select Cut Path. And now we can get rid of that. Now I'm going to duplicate this object, hold Shift, click on this line, and go to Path, Cut Path. And now we can get rid of that object. And now we want to merge these paths together. So let's select each of these by clicking on them while holding Shift. And we'll go to the Nodes tool. And I'm going to select these nodes right here and merge them together by clicking this button that says Join Selected Nodes. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to join these nodes as well. And now let's make the join rounded in the stroke settings. And we will add the corners LPE on here. And then I'll select these two nodes and make them rounded. And then I'll select this node down here and I'll make that rounded. And then I'm going to duplicate this line. Right click it, go to duplicate. Hold shift, click on this object down here at the bottom and go to path, cut path. And then we can just select that line in there and press delete. And then we have to do the same thing to this rectangle. So let's duplicate this object again. Hold shift, click on this rectangle, and again, cut path. There we go. And now we could just take that line and get rid of it. Okay, so let's select all of this now. Let's make sure we have it converted to a path first, in case there's any leftover path effects applied to it. And then we'll go to path, combine, and we can bring the opacity back up. And now I'm just going to draw some circles in here. So let me grab the circle tool and I'm going to hold control and click and drag to draw a circle. I'm going to apply a black fill and I'm going to remove the black stroke by holding shift and clicking on the black swatch, or the red X rather. And then I'm just going to scale this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp copies of this. So I'm just going to, while clicking and dragging, I'm going to press the space bar and that'll allow me to stamp copies of this circle very quickly and easily without having to duplicate each one. And there we go. So let's group all of that together, select it all, go to Object, Group, and move this up here. And there we go. All right, so the next one would be the block of cheese. Let's get working on that one. I'll grab the circle tool, hold control, click and drag to draw a circle. And I'm going to take this rounded node out here and click and drag this out like this. Make sure you bring your cursor outside of the circle so that you get this triangular shape. If you bring the cursor inside of the circle, you get a different outcome. We want this right here. So I'm going to take this and bring this out to about here so that we end up with like this Pac-Man sort of shape. And then I'll take this node down here and I'm going to bring that around as well, out to about there. And then we will convert that to a path. And I just want to flatten that a bit. So I'm going to take this top handle up here and just click and drag it down like that. And now I'm going to apply a stroke to this. So I'm going to hold shift, click the black swatch, and then remove the black fill by clicking on the red X. And let's duplicate this by right-clicking and duplicate, and then hold control and move this other copy up about this far. And let me make these strokes 10 pixels so that they're consistent with the other objects that we drew. And now I'm going to turn on snapping again. I'm going to grab my pen tool and snap to these corners to draw a shape around them like that, a 4-point shape. And let's get rid of this bottom object. And then we'll take this one, we'll make this the same size, 10 pixels. Rounded join. And then I'm going to draw some circles in here. So let me grab the circle tool and I'll hold control and click and drag to draw a circle. It's going to start us off drawing a partial circle. So let's come up here to the tool settings menu and click on this button that says make the shape a holy ellipse. There we go. And then I'm going to scale that down. And let's turn off snapping again. I'm going to make this a little larger and I'll bring this one over here. And I will hold shift and click on the other object and go to path difference. And now we have a hole cut out of that object. And then I'm going to draw another ellipse in here like that. Okay, in fact, I'm going to make this a little bigger because the lines are a little too heavy. There we go. And let me draw another circle. I'm going to hold control, click and drag. Grab the select tool and let's hold shift and click, select both objects and go to path difference. Looking good. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Hold control, click and drag. This time I'm going to draw a bigger circle. And then hold shift and click on that and go to path difference. And now I'm just going to draw some circles going in here. So let me grab my circle tool, holding control, clicking and dragging to draw the circle. Same thing over here. and then another one over here. And I'll just move these around and adjust them as needed. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to select everything here and go to Path, Combine, and there we go. We now have the block of cheese. Okay, so the final icon on the list would be the taco, so let's get working on that. I'm going to grab the circle tool, hold Control and click and drag to draw a circle, convert that to a path, and I'll grab the nodes tool and I'm going to take this bottom node and delete it. Then I want to take these two nodes down here and convert them to corner nodes by clicking on that. That says Make Selected Nodes Corner. And then I want to collapse these two handles right here. So I'm going to hold the Control key and I'm going to click on each of them. And now we have a half circle. So I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to hold Shift and take this arrow over here on the side and just scale that in about that far. And then I'll click on the object to get the rotation and shearing handles. And then I'll take this arrow right here and hold my Option key, or that would be Alt on Windows or Linux, and just scale this up, or just move it up one step like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this. Right click, duplicate, hold Control and move this copy over here. And then I'm going to duplicate this one, and then hold Shift and click on this other shape over here and go to Path and select Cut Path. And now we could take this object and delete it. And I'm going to grab the Nodes tool. Let me take this object right here, and let me take this node and go to, or I want to select this option up here that says Break Path at Selected Nodes, and that should separate it into different nodes. So I want to move this node out of the way. I want to take this other node, there we go, move that out of the way for now. And let's turn snapping back on. And I'm going to take this object and I'm going to snap this node right here. And then I can just take this path and curve this down like that. And I can click on that node and just adjust that handle so that it goes nice and smooth. And do the same thing over here with this handle. And to ensure that this node is smooth, I'm going to hold the Control key and click on it. And there we go. And I'm going to take this node over here and bring this down about that far. I'm not going to connect it. I guess you can if you want to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it disconnected like that. And with that selected, let's add the corners LPE setting, and then just take this node right here and round this like that. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Let's convert that to a path by clicking that button. And I want to take this object right here and just take this node on the end and just delete it. So that's gone now. And I'm going to turn off snapping. And I'm going to go back to my pen tool. And I want to enable the B-spline setting again. And once again, I'm just going to click to add points to add a scribbled line going through this space right here. And once I'm finished, I can press enter. And I want to make this the same size, 10 pixels. And we want the rounded cap. We can grab the nodes tool and adjust this as needed. Okay, now let's convert that to a path. Let's select everything here and go to Path and select Combine. And we can move this back over here with the other objects, and there we go. If you found this lesson useful, then consider checking out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 60 videos where I go over all of the tools and features in Inkscape, and I explain what they are and demonstrate how they work. Kind of like how I did in this video. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you want. And best of all, there's no monthly membership fees. You just pay $17 one time and you're in for life. I'll have some information about that down below if you want to check that out. As always, thanks for watching.